Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. One of the big storylines in this football game between LSU and Texas A&M is going to be Texas A&M's ability to run the football. It is their identity on offense. And quite frankly, I realize I have the information leading up to the opinion making, but you can kind of tell that Colin Klein, a Kansas State guy, is running this Texas A&M offense because it's got some Kansas State vibes. They're in the shotgun. It's not always a work of art. I wouldn't call it extremely precise, but I would call it physical. I would call it productive. I would call it steady at this point in the season. Yeah, the quarterback has made some mistakes. I don't know that that's completely foreign to Kansas State football, but it's not an offense that's littered with NFL guys. They don't have Mike Evans. They don't have Christian Kirk. I don't even know if they have Devon Achane at this point. They don't have Evan Stewart. It's not a star-studded group of players. They certainly don't have Johnny Manziel, but they've been pretty good. They've won, as we've mentioned, 3 of their 4 SEC games by double digits. They've run the ball really, really well, and that's going to be the identity of the offense, and that's kind of what you figure when you talk to a Kansas State football fan. That's what it kind of looks like. They're not going to have a lot of pros, but they're going to produce, and they're going to win a lot of games. And so the question is, how does LSU's run defense match up against Texas A&M's run offense? Let's talk about the Aggie run offense first. They're second in the SEC in yards per game. They lead the Southeastern Conference in yards per carry. When they run the football, they average better than 5 yards per carry. Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels are the bell cow backs. I think most of you are familiar with Moss. He's an Estruma product from right here in Baton Rouge. There's an interesting little caveat there that Texas A&M's running back is from the backyard of LSU in Baton Rouge, and LSU's running back Caden Durham is from the Dallas area, which not quite as close to Texas A&M, but still he's a Texas kid, and they'll be facing off against each other in this game. But Moss is 6 feet tall, 215 pounds. He hit a home run against Missouri, 75-yard touchdown. I don't know if I would call him an elite speed back. I would call him a balanced back who's done a really good job this year. Against Notre Dame, he carried it 20 times for 70 yards. Against Florida, he averaged 6.1 yards per carry, went over 100 yards in that game, 110. Against Arkansas, 9 yards a carry in that game. He went over 100 yards in that game, 117 on just 13 carries. In that one, against Missouri, he had the 75-yard touchdown run, so that skewed the numbers a bit, but still 12 carries, 138 yards. A&M ran the ball just fine that day. And last week, not as productive, 65 yards on 17 carries against Mississippi State. He's a good player. And Amari Daniels a little bit shorter, but still stout back who is averaging 4.5 yards a carry and has 5 touchdowns. It's a 1-2 punch there in the backfield. No matter who the quarterback is, whether it's Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman, A&M wants to run the ball, and they've done a great job of it. Who have they done it against? And that's where you start to get in the question. Florida, A&M ran it up and down the field on them. Just absolutely dominated them in the swamp. Florida's the number 15 run defense in a 16-team SEC. Missouri, A&M put on a clinic in that game. Missouri is the 10th best run defense in the SEC, and I would not wager that Missouri has played the toughest schedule in the league to this point. Auburn, sure, A&M on the road, tough game. No doubt. But Boston College, Vanderbilt, not exactly murder's row. Mississippi State, they're the worst run defense in the SEC to this point. Makes sense. They couldn't stop Toledo. Arkansas is number 8. That's the best run defense Texas A&M has played. So is this a function of A&M being really good in the run game? Is this a function of who they played not being very good? Well, that doesn't really matter. What matters is what LSU can do against it. And LSU is the number 9 run defense in the SEC. It's interesting that you can phrase it 2 different ways. If I told you LSU was the 9th best run defense in the SEC, you would go, well, that's not very good. But if I phrase it a different way and I said LSU's the 32nd best run defense in the country, you go, well, that's not that bad. 30 seconds, firmly in the top quarter. But the SEC's got 8 better run defenses because nobody can run the ball in the SEC in September because you play a bunch of teams that aren't very good. But LSU is 12th in the SEC in yards per carry allowed, just under 4. And you look at some of the better run offenses that LSU's played in the SEC. Ole Miss is 3rd Arkansas is 4th, and then you got South Carolina, who comes in at 9th. And how did LSU fare against them? And there are so many ways you can play with these numbers, and I think y'all know the story, so I'm not going to play any tricks on you here. I'm just going to tell you what they are, and we'll talk about it. But Ole Miss is 3rd in the conference in rushing offense. They average 200 yards per game. Keep in mind, that does factor in the garbage teams they played early in the season when they scored 77 points on somebody, Murray State or something, whatever. But they average 200 yards per game. They got 180 on LSU, and we're all well aware that 50 of those 180 came on one play, the 4th down run, where they found a crease and hit the home run. South Carolina gashed LSU on the ground for 243 yards rushing. Now, 2 of them came on 65-plus yard plays, but still, you're talking about a lot of rushing yards, 243. And then you got Arkansas, who's 4th in the SEC in rushing, and LSU held them to 38 yards on the ground. So how should I massage these numbers? How should I talk about it? Should I say, well, hey, Ole Miss, Ulysses Bentley, 50-yard touchdown run. Take that out. Ole Miss didn't run it great. South Carolina busted 2 big ones. Rocket Sanders off left end, Lenora Sellers right up the gut. And if you take those out, South Carolina, fine day on the ground. Or should you say, well, LSU's gotten gashed for over 180 yards against 2 of these teams that can run the ball, and A&M statistically runs it better than both of them. Like, I can take either one. Here's what I really feel about the running contest. I feel like A&M runs the ball well. I don't think they're Eddie Lacy's Alabama team behind that offensive line in 2012 that nobody could deal with. They came to Tiger Stadium, Benny Logan, Barkevius Mingo, Sam Montgomery, Freak Johnson, Ego Ferguson, a bunch of guys who played in the NFL couldn't do anything against that line. I don't think this is that for Texas A&M. I think their statistics are a tad inflated based on playing inferior teams. I think if they had Georgia and Tennessee on that schedule instead of Florida and Mississippi State, it looks a lot different. However, I think they've got a good offensive line and a good veteran tailback. I think they run the ball pretty well. I think LSU is markedly better against the run than they were against South Carolina and Nichols at that point in the season. And I think A&M will have some success running the ball. I do not believe they will run for 196 yards in this game. I think that number settles somewhere closer to 130 yards, unless LSU gives up the massive play. And that is where this thing kind of shakes out. I think if LSU forces A&M to continue to plod down the field, play by play by play, you've got a better chance of Connor Wigman making a mistake. Whether that mistake is an errant throw for a pick, an errant throw for an incompletion, whether it allows LSU's pass rush to get home one time or two, whether it's just a missed read. Like, the more LSU puts it in the hands of Connor Wigman and out of the hands of Le'Veon Moss, the better. And the only way to do that is to make A&M keep coming back. And if you give up a 65-yard run for a touchdown or a 48-yard run to put them into the red zone, all of a sudden you eliminate that possibility. I think LSU's run defense is fine. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's elite. I don't think it's atrocious. I think it's fine. I think A&M's run offense is good. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's elite. And I think they're going to lean on it a lot in this game. Colin Klein does not want Connor Wigman coming out ripping 16-yard out routes. He wants Le'Veon Moss getting 6 yards a carry. Greg Penn, Whit Weeks, Major Burns, and those tackles who never show up on the stat sheet but are allowing the linebackers to roam, those guys have got to step up for LSU. If you slow down the running game, which teams have not done, they have not, then you've got a real chance. If you don't, it's going to be a long night. That's probably a cliche-riddled analysis at the end there, because everybody who runs the ball great generally wins the game. You control time of possession, you tire out the defense, you get into short third downs. Like, all that happens when you do things like that. But this is so much the identity of this Texas A&M offense. They have to run the ball. That'll be an emphasis for LSU. It's just a question of whether or not they can do it. If what they did last week is an indication, they're going to be in really good shape. If what they did at South Carolina or Nichols is the indication, well, not good. It's a huge, huge part of the game. I think A&M feels great they'll be able to do it. I think LSU's certainly blossoming with some confidence at this point, but it's a prove-it spot. I feel a little bit like the Arkansas side of things here, although A&M's, I think, a step up from Arkansas. But the more I look at this game, the more I analyze it, I don't feel like I normally feel when LSU plays one of the top teams in the SEC. I think A&M's roster is not quite there. Now, jury's very much still out on where LSU's offense is, where their personnel is, if they're an elite team in the SEC. And I think we learned that on Saturday. But just breaking it down as the week goes on. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.